And we are back and coming to you live from the Ashland Fly Shop headquarters in downtown Ashland, Oregon, straddling the Southern Oregon, Northern California border, deep in the heart of steelhead country. Thank you so much for joining us for the world famous Ashland Fly Shop Fishing Report. Hang on to your hats. Let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. All right, let's kick things off where we usually do with the beautiful Rogue River. Runs right through the Rogue Valley here that we are at the southern end of. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Not too much going on in the upper Rogue. Most people kind of poking around for some early winter fish and maybe even still some late summers, although not hearing too much about that, but then there's not a lot of people fishing. But the Rogue has experienced a fair amount of high water, off-color water from most of the tributaries down through like the Medford area, Central Point area. So it's been a little unfishable for a while. It's kind of back to where it's at now. It's kind of back to decent, looks pretty decent, but still most fishing is going to happen higher up, and that's what I would suggest as well. So swinging flies, nymphing up there, not a bad idea. The Rogue is open for steelhead 12 months out of the year, so it is, there's always a chance there's one in there, so you can go try your luck. But chance of a winter steelhead up this high, possibly, but I wouldn't bet on it. Same, late summer fish, why? But trout fishing the upper river in the Rogue Elk area, Casey Park, below the hatchery actually can be pretty good. So so that's something to do this time of year. But the Rogue really needs, we need a little time there for those winter fish to come up. We can talk a little bit about sliding down into the Grants Pass area, as I mentioned, looking for winter fish below the Applegate in the Galice area, Merlin area. That would be worth kind of poking around. I'm sure there's some winter steelhead moving through there at this point. Again, stand below that that Applegate tributary. We see a lot of winter steelhead up in there, and then some of the other restricted tributaries in that area as well that have pretty decent spawning activity for winter steelhead. So that's where I would focus my efforts now. Swinging flies, you're looking at, depending on flows, pretty decent sized sink tips. T14 is pretty common. We can't keep it in stock right now. Bigger flies, a little bit bigger flies. They don't have to be giant, but a little bit bigger patterns this time of year. Blacks and blues are fantastic. Dark colors I usually like this far up the system, but you can certainly experiment with brighter colors. Nymphing, all the same stuff, big bugs. I usually don't get away from the egg too much for winter steelhead. If you're going to fish a big dark stone, hothead stone, or an egg pattern, you're probably going to find something with that setup. So, so that's what we're looking at on the Rogue River. We'll talk about the Applegate really quickly. I haven't heard anything from the Applegate. So the Applegate is a pretty tight-lipped place. We don't hear too much unless we get a first-hand account or some people that we know. Sean, who fishes here, who works here with us, thankfully, does fish there a bit. So he hasn't been out there yet, but he'll be providing us some information. But typically, few fish are caught in the early end, and it seems like it kind of dips down for a while and then really ramps up in the month of March before it closes at the end of March. Keeping an eye on flows. They're back down to a pretty low level, but we do have some precipitation coming later in the weeks. We might see those change. Not seeing a whole lot of stuff happen there, so I won't spend too much time on the Applegate, but we will keep a side eye on it for you. All right. Talk about the North Umpqua. Definitely talk about it more for winter than we do for summer. Winter on the north is, you got a pretty good shot at a fish, I think it's a little bit easier to pick apart when the flows are up a little bit. And I think it's a pretty good bet. And there are some real tankers in there. So North Umpqua is a pretty good bet right now. I have heard of a couple of folks getting into fish up there. You know, I wouldn't expect too much at this point, but they get up there pretty darn fast, much faster than they do on the Rogue. So, you know, that upper river, that, you know, fly water only section probably is a pretty decent bet right now for winter steelhead, and you're certainly going to see a few less people up there than you do in the summertime. So North Umpqua winter steelhead's pretty good bet. Watch it up there. Keep an eye on the weather. We are supposed to see some low elevation snow a little bit later this week, so keep an eye on that. That can really cause havoc with getting up there depending on where you're coming from, especially if you're coming over from Bend or other side of the Cascades. It can be kind of a treacherous ride. So keep an eye on the weather, but North Umpqua is a pretty good bet as we get into the next couple months here. Klamath River, just over the hill, hanging in there. You know, it's definitely still a good bet for the next couple months. I've certainly seen a couple good fish come out of there. You know, people just don't fish as much this time of year, so we just see a little bit less of that. And a lot of winter steelheaders, you know, really gravitate to the coast looking for a pretty special fish there. But the Klamath still, you know, the upper Klamath still hangs on for another, God, I'd say another 30 days at least. Did we look at the flows over there, Chris?
Okay, for Klamath?
Yeah.
It's still got to be at like
1,000 CFS. So really easy getting around, really easy walking, wading in there. We don't do a lot of drifting, but drifting is also really good up there. Dam stretch to Klamath on, there's probably a good number of fish in there, and that should be pretty good fishing. All the same stuff that we like to use for nymphing. A lot of nymphing fishing happening in that stretch, in that kind of upper stretch. But yeah, lots of hothead stones, smaller nymphs, egg patterns, things like that always work well. Simple stuff. But that should hang on pretty good. And then we like to walk in a lot from below Klamath Bridge down to I-5 and even further down, and that can continue to be good. And that can swing really well this time of year. It can get really cold in there, and the water temps, I think, can really play into the bite for sure. But can be a lot of fun to swing flies down through there, and can be some pretty decent fish down there. So always a really viable place to go. The upper Klamath. Talk about a little further south. Our friends down there still continue to do well. The lower Sac, as we like to talk about, lower Sacramento below Shasta, just, you know, what a great fishery. Our friends from the Fly Shop, AC Fly Fishing, Confluence Outfitters do really well down there this time of year. You know, so if you're looking for a break from colder weather, you want to try something different, head down there. You know, not a ton of walk and wade. The Fly Shop can certainly help you figure out where to walk and wade, but if you can get in a guide trip or get in a boat, drop your boat in there, it can be some pretty darn good trout fishing through the winter months down there. So definitely worth looking at down there. Just kind of rolling on with Northern California. Trinity looks like there's been some pretty good, fishing. Had a nice report from Confluence Outfitters the other day. Some folks getting into a few fish here and there, but not like we've seen in the past. But I think it's definitely a viable fishery this time of year. It should be pretty close to kind of the peak. So we'll keep an eye on that, but check in with the Fly Shop. They always do a really good job of knowing what's going on over there. And that's what we're hearing from there. All right, so let's talk about the coast. We have seen a few unicorns in the past week or so from some good friends of ours, some really exceptional, very hard-earned fish. Right place, right time, guys that have been at it. We've seen some really good setups as far as weather. We do have some more weather coming this week. Looks like we're gonna get some snow up here. They're projected to get a lot of rain, but the flows aren't looking like they're gonna move much, which seems insane. So I would watch that, and this next bump could be pretty good, but we should see fresh fish coming into the coast, coastal streams, you know, easily for the next 6 weeks or so. But yeah, we've seen some really exceptional fish, really a nice time to look for something special out there, whether you're nymph fishing. If you're nymph fishing, it's all swinging flies. We do like to bring out the kind of slinkier, sparser, larger patterns, little more softer colors, pinks, peaches, whites, things like that can work pretty well. Something that's a little more translucent there on those coastal streams, depending on where you're at. Don't overlook the traveling lanes, soft inside spots. You know, they're not always going to be in the middle of the bucket. So find your spot, find your place out there. Some really interesting places to fish. You know, the kind of the general places. But yeah, we're happy to follow up with any questions that you might have about that. We plan on spending a little time over there ourselves, so we will keep in touch with you about what we find. Upper Sacramento, quickly, just a little trout fishing down there. Flows are low. Gosh, it looks really great. I've seen a couple reports lately from the Upper Sacramento. It looks like people are finding some fish, which is very common this time of year. Wonderful place to go tromp around on a really nice, bright, sunny day like today in Northern California. Just a beautiful, beautiful place to be. And it can produce some really nice fish down there. So we've spent a fair amount of time doing that over the years, so we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Really, really a nymphing game down there, you know, through this time of year. You might hit a blueing olive hatch or something if you're really lucky and know where to look, but pretty uncommon, mostly going to be fishing nymphs, but you can really find some good fish down there fishing nymphs. So standard stuff, you know, rubber leg stoneflies, things like that. You can even up the size of the nymphs a little bit in summer. We fish a lot of tiny stuff, but you can fish a lot of 14s, 16s, you know, as your dropper fly this time of year. But could be quite good. Look for that middle section of the river at this time of year that's getting more sun. The water temps creeping up just a little bit down there. So look for those, you know, I like that stretch around the Castle Crags area, you know, where it's kind of in direct line with the sun. That can be pretty nice in there. It picks up some nice warmth and bumps up those water temps a bit. So Upper Sac, always a good option, open all year, always a good trout option in the winter. So that's what we're seeing out there, folks. We've had some really nice days in January. We hope you take advantage and get out and do a little fishing in this beautiful part of the world. Thank you so much for your support here at the Ashland Fly Shop. We appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.